Hey everyone, this is Daryl, also known as the average Excel user. In this video, I'm going to be going through the index match function. The index match function is a great alternative to your traditional VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP functions, and it's considered to be a little more advanced because it's a combination of two functions, the index function and the match function. To begin, let's take a look at the index function first. Now the purpose of the index function is to return a value. The first argument is the array argument, and what that is that's the cell range that contains the values that you want to return. The next argument is the row number, and that identifies the row in the array. The third argument identifies the column number in the array if there happens to be one. Like I said before, the purpose of the index function is to return to us a value. So over here is my data set, which is the cars sold per month. I have the color of my cars here and the months across the top. Up here is what I want to return using the index function. So let's start by typing it in. So the array is a cell range that contains the value that I want to return, and I want to return a color. So I'm going to highlight this cell range here and move on to the next argument. So the next argument is the row number. So let's say I want to return the color green. Well, the color green is going to be 1, 2, 3 rows in my array. So I'm going to type 3 and enter. And now I've returned the color green. Now if I wanted to return the color white, well then I would change the 3 to a 7. So let's move on to the next value that I want to return, which is the month. So I'm going to use the index again, and my array will be this cell range here. And now let's say I want to return the month March. Well, March is going to be 1, 2, 3. And that returns March. And now let's say I want to return January. Well, it's going to be the first row in this array. Now let's see if we can return any one of these numbers within my data set using the index function. Let's say I want to return this number here, 143. Well, I type in index and select this cell range, and then type in 3, and that will return 143. But what if I wanted to return 250 as well? Well, I'd have to expand my cell range because 250 is not included right now, and now I'm going to include it. And it's also in the third row, so this can stay, but our column number is not going to be, it's going to be the second column because this is our first and this is our second. If I type 2, that returns 250. So I can actually expand this array, and now we can really choose any number in this data set. So if I wanted to choose this 200, my row number would be 6, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows down in my array, and 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, and that returns 200. So that's really what the index function does. It takes number inputs and returns to you a value within a specified cell range or your array. Now let's move on to the match function. For the match function, you can treat it like your VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP functions, where you're looking up a value in a lookup table or array. So over here, I have the same data set that I had before, cars sold per month. But up here, I'm going to be using the match function instead of the index function. The match function is made up of 3 arguments. The first argument is the lookup value, and the lookup value is the value that you want to look up in the lookup array. The second argument is the lookup array, and that's the cell range that contains the value that you want to look up. And the third argument specifies whether you want an approximate or an exact match. In most cases when you use the index match function, you're going to want to use an exact match, which is inputted by typing in 0. And the purpose of the match function is to give you back a number. So up here is where I'm going to be using the match function to figure out the row number of a specific car color. So if I wanted to find the row position of the car color black, I'm going to look up the car color in this lookup array, and I want an exact match. So you can see that it's returning to me the number 1, because 1 is in the first position in this array. Now I'm going to make this into a drop-down list so that I can flip between each of the car colors. And we can see how the number changes when I change the car color. So purple is the 5th row number, and white is the 7th. Now this number is what we're going to be using in our index function. In this example, I want to know the number of cars sold in February 2019 that are white. So I use the index function and I select this cell range and I use cell D3 as my row number. That gives me 143. So within this cell range, I wanted to return the number that is in the 7th row, which is 143, corresponding to white. Now we can see how this number changes as I change the color. So if I want to check green, you can see that it's returning 250. Okay, so let's do another example, but for the month. So I'm going to create another list, but using the months. So I'm going to choose March. Now let's look up its row position within this cell range. So March is going to be the 3rd position in this cell range, and that's going to be the input into this next cell here. So I want to know the number of gray cars sold. So that's going to be this cell range here. And then my row number is just going to be that cell here. So that returns 250. So this is saying within this cell range here, return to me the value that's in the 3rd position, which is 250, corresponding to March. Now if I change this to January, that gets me 200. So you can see how the match function plays into the index function. Now let's move on to a two-way lookup, which combines two match functions into one index function. So here we have our last example. So over here, I have the same data set that I had before. Over here, I'm going to be returning the number of cars sold by the color of the car and what month the car was sold. And I want this to be a dynamic formula that changes when I change the color of the car as well as the month. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a drop-down list of the color of the car, as well as a drop-down list for the month. And let's use the match function here. So if I choose the color gray, for example, that returns to me the row number 4. And then if I choose March 2019, that gives me the position 3 within this array. So I'm going to be using these two numbers in my index function, one for the row number and one for the column number. So the array is going to be any of these values, and my row number will be this cell here, and my column number will be the cell beneath it. So that's returning to me 250 right now, because if I go 4 rows down and 3 columns to the right, I see 250. Now let's see if I change the color and the month. So that returns to me 125. That's because green is the 3rd row down and the 4th column to the right. Now to simplify this formula, what I could do is copy this function into this area, and then copy this one into this area here. So now I don't even need these two in order to have a dynamic formula. So one more time. For the car color blue, in the month of February, I sold 286 cars because blue is the 2nd row down and the 2nd column to the right. So that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this in the future, please hit the subscribe button. I'll see you in the next video.